There is a truth very few people realize. Women do not remember you because of how well you speak, how impressive your actions are, or how hard you try to be attractive. They remember you because of how they feel when they are around you, and because of the deep emotional layers you touch without even trying to. Many men believe that to be remembered, they have to stand out, be different, or create some special moment. But in reality, what stays in someone's mind the longest is often very quiet. It is the feeling of being seen, being understood, or being touched at a very real place inside them, a place they rarely show to others. If you have ever met someone and found yourself thinking about them long after they were gone, without really knowing why, this is the reason. The human brain does not strongly remember words. It remembers emotional states. And when you create a state that feels safe enough, deep enough, and real enough, people naturally associate you with that feeling. The most important secret is revealed at the end of this video, so make sure you watch until the end. You will understand why some people do not try to impress at all, yet leave a very deep mark in the hearts of others. And if you want to build attraction in a sustainable way, without tricks, and without forcing yourself, subscribe to the channel now. The content here does not teach you how to manipulate others. It helps you understand how to truly show up so people genuinely remember you. Most encounters fade away quickly, not because they lack attraction, but because they never reach an emotional level deep enough for the brain to store them. You can have a pleasant conversation, be polite, and even create some initial attraction, but then everything slowly disappears. Not because you did something wrong, but because the interaction stayed on the surface. Many men focus on getting others to like them, but they overlook something far more important: making others feel something meaningful when they are around them. When a conversation revolves only around information, generic stories, or attempts to impress, it does not leave a strong emotional trace. The brain quickly labels it as familiar and allows it to fade away. Here is the core issue: people do not remember who talked the most or who seemed the most interesting in the moment. They remember who made them feel seen, who truly listened, or who touched a very real part of who they are. When that does not happen, even if everything feels fine, the experience passes without leaving anything behind. What needs to change is not saying more or doing something more special, but how you are present in the conversation. When you try to impress, your attention is directed outward, focused on how you are being perceived. But when you are truly present, the attention shifts inward toward the other person, and that is where memories are formed. The human brain does not remember effort. It remembers states. If being around you makes someone feel safer, more heard, or more connected to an emotional part of themselves they rarely express, the brain automatically links you to that feeling. And that feeling does not need to be intense. It only needs to be real. Many people misunderstand this and believe that to be remembered, they must become mysterious, clever, or unusual. But the truth is this: what people remember the longest is the experience of being themselves without having to be defensive. When you do not try to steer emotions, rush the conversation, or control the outcome, you create a space where others willingly open up. From this perspective, being remembered is no longer a goal to chase, but a natural result of genuine presence. And to understand how that presence works within human psychology, we need to look at the core principle behind it. The core principle that makes someone remember you for a long time is not communication techniques or clever words. It lies in how you activate their emotional memory. The human brain does not store people as a list of traits. It stores feelings associated with those people. And the strongest feelings do not come from short bursts of excitement, but from moments when someone feels touched on the inside without feeling invaded. When you show up calmly, without rushing, and without seeking validation, you unintentionally create a rare psychological space, a space that feels safe for emotions to surface. In that space, the other person naturally reveals very real parts of themselves: the desire to be seen, the fear of not being good enough, or wounds they have never put into words. The brain remembers these moments most strongly because they are linked to the feeling of being allowed to be oneself. What matters is this: a psychological imprint does not come from leading or controlling someone else's emotions. It comes from not stepping in too early, not filling every gap, and not turning the conversation into a performance. When you allow emotions to form naturally, the other person begins to associate you with that experience, not because you did something special, but because you did not disrupt the moment. So the secret is not making someone think about you more, but allowing them to experience a state they rarely get to experience. The rarer that state is, the deeper the imprint becomes. And this principle shows up most clearly in very ordinary, very small situations. Moments where most people react on instinct and unknowingly lose the chance to be remembered. This principle does not exist only in theory. It reveals itself clearly in small moments where most people react automatically and accidentally erase the emotional imprint. This is exactly where the difference is created. The first situation, the conversation feels fine, but nothing stands out. The common wrong reflex is trying to make the conversation more interesting, telling more stories, talking more, or trying to impress. The right reflex is to slow down and shift your attention to the other person's emotional state. Instead of adding more content, you listen more deeply, respond briefly but accurately, and allow moments of silence to exist. This creates an imprint because the brain remembers the feeling of being deeply listened to more than the amount of information exchanged. When you do not try to push the conversation anywhere, the other person naturally turns inward and begins to associate you with that experience. The second situation, the other person starts sharing something more personal. The wrong reflex is to rush into empathy, give advice, or share your own story to create connection. The right reflex is to stay with their story for one beat longer. You do not correct, explain, or guide. You simply acknowledge the emotion through calm presence. This creates an imprint because it is rare for people to be allowed to express something real without interruption. The brain links you to that sense of safety, and that feeling is what makes you memorable. The third situation, a pause appears and silence enters the conversation. The wrong reflex is to fill it immediately out of fear that the conversation is dying. The right reflex is to allow the silence to exist. You do not rush or show discomfort. This silence allows emotions to settle and reorganize. Why does this create an imprint? Because the brain remembers moments when it is rarely allowed to slow down. When you do not break the pause, the other person often feels a depth they cannot quite name, and you become part of that memory. The fourth situation, the other person is indirectly seeking validation. The wrong reflex is to give direct praise, flatter them, or rush to reassure them. The right reflex is to acknowledge in a subtle, indirect way, for example, by reflecting the value behind what they are proud of, rather than praising the result itself. This creates an imprint because you are not giving them a quick hit of validation. You are giving them the feeling of being seen at a deeper level. The brain remembers moments of being truly understood far more strongly than moments of being praised repeatedly. The fifth situation, the interaction is coming to an end and everything feels light and easy. The wrong reflex is trying to extend it, trying to close with something special so you will not be forgotten. The right reflex is to end at the right moment. Stay calm and avoid adding extra emotional weight. The reason this creates an imprint is that the brain tends to remember experiences more strongly when they end, while emotions are still open. When you do not try to frame or control the final feeling, the other person completes the experience on their own in their mind, and you stay there longer. All five situations share the same core point. You are not trying to create emotions. You are creating space for emotions to appear. And that space, because it is rare and hard to find, becomes the reason people remember you long after you are gone. If you look back at the entire video, one thing becomes very clear. People do not remember you because you did something special. They remember you because you allowed them to experience an emotional state they rarely have. When you do not try to lead, do not try to impress, and do not step in too early with someone else's emotions, you give them a space where they can truly be themselves. And the brain always remembers moments like that very deeply. What matters is that you do not need to apply everything at once. Simply begin by noticing the moment you are about to react on instinct and choose to slow down. When you feel the urge to say more, pause. When you want to fill the silence, allow it to exist. When you want to be remembered, remember this. It is the absence of effort that leaves the deepest imprint. In the next video, we will go deeper into a very practical question. How do you maintain this emotional imprint over time, instead of only during a brief encounter? This is the point where many interactions begin to fade if it is not properly understood. If this video helped you see attraction and connection differently, press like to support the channel. Share it with people who may be looking for deeper connection, and subscribe so you do not miss the next content. Thank you for staying until the end of the video, and I will see you in the next one.